I
Yeah.
there's a lot of skin knees and things, as we come out and we learn and we grow
Yes.
of what, I've tell
Sure.
this to other people
Sure.
is of like what not to do. Right? Because then when you're when
Yeah.
you're when you're
Yeah.
coming out,
Yeah.
like you don't get to this spot of like this wisdom that you're dropping right now and you're sharing without the
Yeah.
trials and tribulations of being a whatever rank you want to call it,
Right.
or
Right. Yeah.
whatever leader
Yeah.
level you are, or whatever
Hmm.
informal leader you are in life, without
Hmm. Hmm.
making mistakes.
Yeah.
You don't just magically appear there.
Absolutely.
And it takes
Yeah.
it takes having good mentors and coaches and people investing in you. And
Exactly. Right.
yeah,
Right. Love that. I mean, you remember what it was like. That environment. I tell you, one of the things about the Marine Corps is the mentoring is continuous. It's straightforward, right? Feedback is a gift, but sometimes it stings a little bit, right? Uh, but they took it seriously. It was a part of your leadership responsibility. I remember my first, in fact, I wrote about it's. We've got little vignettes in the book to kind of help kind of clarify different ideas and one of the stories I put in there was about my first jury trial as a young captain with as a prosecutor out at Camp
mm,
Pendleton. And it was a minor case. It was like I don't know, if it was a UA, unauthorized absence case or something. And anyway, the defense asked for a jury, probably because I was new to the courtroom and I prepared, and we had all these witnesses, and I mean, there was a jury, right? So you've got all these military members, and listen, this thing couldn't have gone worse for me. I absolutely did not have my act together. And I mean, 3 public, embarrassing days of performance in the courtroom. And I lost the case. The wily defense counsel was just kind of smiled at me as he left the courtroom, and I'm trying to get out of the courtroom as quickly as I could. And the judge said, "Captain, approach the bench." And I thought, "Yes, sir." So I walk up there, and he said, "So how do you think that went?" And I said, "Not well, sir." And he said, "I agree." And he said, "You're pretty good on your feet, but you've got some fundamentals to get down out here in the real world." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, get at it." "Aye, aye, sir." And so I go back to my seat, and I'm trying to gather my files up and run out of the courtroom because I've got to talk to the commanding officer who sent this, authorize a court martial, and explain to him why I lost. Well, little did I even pay attention to. In the back of the room was, so I was a captain, was a major who was the head of our trial team. He had been there the entire time because he knew it was my first contested jury trial. And I turn around and see him, and he said, "Sean, come here for a moment." "Yes, sir." Head's hanging, and I'm embarrassed. And he said, "How do you think that went?" Same question, right? I said, "That did not go well, sir." He said, "Does it sting?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Good." He said, "I want you to walk around with that sting here for a couple of days. But on Friday, I want you to bring your files, come by my office after lunch. We're going to spend Friday afternoon working through lessons learned. We're going to we're going to we're going to go through this and learn from this." He said, "I think you've got some good instincts, and I think you've got potential that needs to be developed." I said, "Thank you, sir. I appreciate that." And then he looked at me and he said, "Welcome to the courtroom." And I thought, I used that I learned from that. First of all, became a capable trial attorney. So I got back on the horse and through some hard work and coaching and mentoring but also as a leader, I thought how extraordinary. He could have cut me off at the knees right there. He could have said, "That's the last case you're going to try.
Yeah,
Why don't you go
absolutely.
back to whatever?" And could have just completely gutted me. Uh, and I resolved from that point forward, and I later became head of the trial team, and I would always go, and I would either second seat or I would be in the courtroom when new attorneys were coming through, or where a case was complex, not to micromanage, but to serve, to help them walk through this storm that I knew they were about to face. So anyway, there's the thing we do, the technical thing. I'm
Yeah,
a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a whatever that thing is, right? But then there's leadership, which has to do with these human beings that are around us. And it's seeing the opportunity to lead and leading in those moments. That's a whole
it's
nother thing.
completely different. It's not
Yeah.
barking a command.
Right.
It's
No.
tell me what
Yeah.
like show me what you saw here. Why did you make that
Mm-hmm.
decision? Did you think
Right.
about these things?
Sure.
And I
Exactly.
had,
Exactly.
one of the guys that invested in me really early in my career, Bill Wilder. I recommend you to go watch it. He was on this. He was an Air Force captain, and he and I worked together at Best Buy. And I had the opportunity in my career early on to sit next to him a few cubes away, and I like by
Mm-hmm.
osmosis I got to hear the
Oh wow.
questioning of this guy. And so he was like four levels up from me, from
Right.
like hierarchy or something like that in the corporate world.
Yeah.
And we bonded, and he's still one of he's a brother to me.
That's
And
so.
I
Yeah.
I made
That's
a
great.
Freudian slip when we were doing one of these, and I said my former friend Bill, and he's like, "Well, I
Yeah.
just found out we're not friends anymore," and I'm like, "Oh my god!" I'm so like, "What?" And so it was super funny, but it's
Uh-huh.
really important because when you do those things, if someone doesn't slow down and like ask you the questions and then guide you around the questions, you don't
Right.
learn because you don't get
Right.
the other perspective.
Yeah.
And
Exactly. All you
that's
do
just
is walk
phenomenal
up.
that you like. That's one of the greatest gifts
Yeah.
you can have and you can give to somebody is teaching them
Hmm.
that perspective. When you,
And that's that tribal
yeah,
knowledge you
it
were
totally
talking
is.
about is we and we lose sight because I was when I left the Marine Corps and went into a civilian law firm, there was none of that. It did not happen. So, the year before, I'm a major. I'm a MU SJA. We're Hong Kong, Singapore, Western Australia, Okinawa. We're 3 ship task force, 2,000 Marines and sailors. We're off the coast of Somalia during Black Hawk Down. There's all this stuff going on, and then a year later, after I left the Marine Corps, now I'm like filing briefs in local court, and I'm looking to the senior lawyers in this law firm, and I'm thinking, oh, I bet I can learn, so much from that guy and from her, and I'm looking forward to this whole interaction, and
It's not the same.
none. They were focused on their clients. They were focused on business, on getting, on landing the next client in the next case. There was so they viewed themselves as lawyers, which is fine, but the whole aspect, the leadership as they didn't view themselves as people with leadership responsibilities, and that was such a big lesson, and that was another story I put in the book. But and until and unless you also recognize, and you may have management responsibilities or technical responsibilities, but you also have responsibilities to these human beings, to their development and well-being and
Yeah.
morale, etc. And boy, it was just a stark that was missing, and I thought, oh my goodness, it's a
And you
desert.
don't have to have the title to do that.
No, absolutely
and
not.
that's the best
Compl-
part.
Look at the name of your podcast, Leaders Lead. Whether you've got a title or not, and I don't care what the title is. I tell you what, when I speak, sometimes I use this. I kind of say, listen, if leadership were all about title, here's what I recommend. This should be a new practice in America. When you're born, and they fill out your birth certificate, so they get your first, middle, last name, get that right, and also let's just hand out titles at that point. Let's give everybody, you can be, so you'll be a vice president, you'll be a, you know, a senior executive vice president, or let's just go ahead and hand out the titles at birth. That'll take care of the leadership problem in America. Well, of course, that's ridiculous, isn't it? It's silly
Boy,
and
we could really go
stupid
down a
and
rabbit hole on
ridiculous.
that one, couldn't we?
Not how it works. Yeah.
We're going to avoid that. I
Okay.
think it's safe for both of us to avoid that one.